Hello, everyone, and welcome to your horoscope for the week of December the 4th till 10th, 2023. We have a very interesting week ahead of us, especially from a psycho-emotional perspective. But of course, that also means that our decision making, our relationships, our moods, the way we feel generally is also going to be quite intensely affected. So even though this is psycho-emotional, it is also going to have a quite relevant, material, physical, or down to earth manifestation because we are going to be influenced to take action much more based on our core feelings, especially how we feel about certain big issues of faith, certain principles, certain dreams, certain goals, certain aspirations in our lives that usually, animate everything in it. So our feelings, our beliefs, our moods, our emotional way that we make sense of life is gonna experience a very powerful shift. And this is because, on one hand, Neptune, the planet which is associated with the grand illusion, is on the 6th of December, changing direction, so going direct. But before it does that, ever since the beginning of the week and even before, even when I'm recording this, Neptune is at a standstill. So its symbolism is greatly amplified. And the shadow expression of this energy is so very obvious. This is where we do not know what to trust anymore. No information, especially that we get from media and, mass sharing of information, and especially information that we get from the political world. This is where our natural reaction by this time is to not trust it, is to perceive it as the darkest side of illusion, so manipulation and make believe. But this tendency is also going to play out in our personal lives in various issues and with various themes, starting from love, from relationships, relationship with ourselves, how far did we advance on our healing journeys and how we feel about that, what it means to us in the now. This is also another example that is definitely going to be highlighted this week. But at the same time, this is also where what is our relationship, what is our feeling with the divine, connected to the divine source. What do we want to do with our connection with the divine in the close future? So this Neptune is really going to be influencing us in a way where we wake up from the dream, where we perhaps wake up from something that we had to surrender at the very end of July when this Neptune officially started to go retrograde. We are awake. It is almost like an alarm clock ringing that the sleep time, that the nap time, that the time to remain unconscious is over. So this is where we are going to be very rapidly facing a lot of truths and a lot of perhaps contemplation that was pending, that was waiting on us for this moment to take place. But it isn't just Neptune that is going to be, how should I say, giving this period a key tone, but it is also Neptune's lower octave, Venus, who makes a very important move from the very beginning of the week, where Venus, on the 4th, so Monday, on one hand, she is going to be an anoretic Libra. So that means the very end degree of Libra, where she usually takes on her shadow expression. So Venus in Libra, the shadow expression, can take on a number of shapes and forms. For example, this is where we might be extremely permissive in a negotiation, in a contract, in a dialogue, but which can be very influential because, for example, it can be legally binding, but it can also be when we look at things so extremely subjectively that the other sides, the other parties, the other persons, point of view and feelings and how they perceive the situation is totally blocked out. So, this is where, when making very important choices and decisions, especially that are legally binding, we are going to have a very, very intense time. But this energy is gravely, let's say, amplified by the fact that Venus also holds a conversation of tension with Pluto. Pluto also being at the very, very end degrees of the sign of Capricorn, and Pluto in Capricorn represents that which holds power over us, a person, an authority figure, a boss, a father figure, external reality, centralized power, the government. There an element that holds power over us. And that is where we have to decide very, very wisely, and with communication, negotiation especially, or having to dish out our needs, our perceptions, our point of view about an alliance, about an agreement, about something that is going to be either legally binding or morally binding. This is where we really, really need to be careful and tap into our greatest wisdom and also our greatest self-knowledge. But by doing so, this can, and we need to take into consideration that at this time, Neptune is also in standstill. So Neptune amplifies the subjectivity of this energy. Subjectivity in the sense that we feel that part which is super subjective. And because of this Neptune, we also know that we need to somehow wash it away, make it as objective as possible. The need, the urge to stay in wisdom, to look at life and the situation, the dialogue, the negotiation, or whatever, through our wisest perception. The need for this is going to be known by us, felt by us, and it is going to be urgent. But it is exactly this attitude, this very realistic and down-to-earth attitude, that in a way is forced upon us by the astral forces, so to speak. This can change the way we thought about the situation, the alliance, the partnership, the connection, the romance, so whatever Venus and Libra can dish out, in a very, very different way. Like, let me give you an example. Maybe not so long ago, under the Neptune retrograde, and especially the connections that hold with Mercury, the disillusionment, the disappointment, the rather sorrowful connection, might have told us that a relationship, maybe romantic or sensual or contractual or job relationship, or our relationship with something external like an institution, for example, we might have felt a strong truth that we are done with this. We are not being respected. Our needs are not being met. We don't feel the right way about this. So we might have, in a very subjective manner, told ourselves that we will take action at the right moment. Now, maybe that moment is arising this week, but how we feel now is totally different, because under Pluto's influence, we take into consideration all the hard facts that maybe a few days or weeks ago we haven't. Like, if that connection is adding a strong stability, Capricorn, structure, power, freedom to our lives, for example, a job. Maybe you don't necessarily feel all that much immersed into it, or maybe you're having a burnout or a disappointment or whatever. But when you look at the paycheck and you consider how much it helps you, your physical existence, then maybe you will have a sudden change of heart that no, perhaps I'm not quitting. Same with a romantic relationship or marriage. If you take a look at what your partner represents in your life on an everyday, the small picture kind of basis, maybe you don't necessarily want to separate all that badly anymore. But of course, this can be the other way around as well, because as I said, Neptune is standing still, so it really awakens us from what was the predominant perception when it was retrograde. So we are awakened from that. We see that in a different vision, from a different angle, from a different perspective. So this is where perhaps you appreciated all the material, or I don't even want to say material, but the stabilizing facts that a connection, job, contract, partnership, romance gave to you. Now under this Neptune and Venus, of course, anoretic, you're gonna wake up to the fact that what you feel deep inside is what matters the most to you. So maybe for some people the facts will diminish in significance. For other people, the facts will grow. And so it really depends on your situation and on your personality type. But what we can expect is to suddenly start to feel different and to see the same thing that might have been so very crystal clear within us for the past months, like from July on, until this moment. Exactly that stable thing might change so very drastically, if I'm allowed to say that, the way we feel about it. Pisces is a dual sign, Neptune's in Pisces. So, it represents one side of the spectrum, but also the total opposite. Because if you look at the glyph of Pisces, the fish are swimming away from one another, they're, like that. So that is the two sides of the spectrum. And for a safe and sound and healthy decision, in regardless what this will mean for us personally, romance, work, contract, any legal situations, Libra. So regardless of what it means for us personally, this is where we are looking at both sides of the spectrum, or both sides of the coin, the same coin, but we have to adapt a vision, a point of view where we simultaneously see both sides of it, because only then can we bring out the higher expression of Libra: balance, equilibrium, justice, fairness, and us being at peace because we are living our truth or our justice. So this is going to be very, very important. But only a few hours after, we're still on the 4th. So with this, I would like to also share my screen with you. Venus moves into the sign of Scorpio. So she leaves Libra. She leaves the sign she rules, her domicile. On my screen, you still see Venus in Libra, anoretic Libra. And now she entered already the sign of Scorpio. Now, Scorpio, on the other hand, is a part of the sky where Venus is not able to bring out her higher qualities. So she is quite uncomfortable there. And it is normal because it is the sign opposite which Venus rules. So Taurus, Scorpio is the opposite sign of Taurus. But Venus in this part of the sky can take on some very useful expressions, if I can actually translate it this way. And useful in the sense that in Libra, she is very, very idealistic. It is the ideal, it is the thought, it is the principle that actually matters. And how it's played out, many times it's not emphasized at all. As long as the principle is there, safe and sound, the attempts to enacted are going to be valid. The success is not needed. In the sign of Scorpio, however, it's the total opposite in the sense that the ideals, the guiding principles, the philosophy, the ideal doesn't matter as much as the results of it, because Scorpio is a sign which has a strong intensity. It needs to get what it wants. It doesn't give up very easily until it reaches its target, until it finally reaches the bullseye. So you can imagine that this also influences Venus. She wants results. She wants things to, in a way, make sense. But love, the principle of love, doesn't have to make sense very many times rationally, logically, or not even subjectively, because the way it makes sense to us may not make sense whatsoever for another person. So there is a strong element of, everyone with their own truth, everyone with their own psychological setup. Scorpio, what our journey through life from a psychological perspective has done to us, how it transformed us, what has it turned us into in any way, shape, and form. For example, including physically. If psychologically, life taught you the wisdom to take care of your physical body very rigorously, well, that may transform you physically into a very fit and beautiful physique person. Like, that is a very strong example of this. But going back to Venus's symbolism, so yes, she wants results. She wants to even understand things, because Scorpio is the sign of research, digging deep, uncovering secrets. So Venus here wants all the facts on the table. And this is where, if in the sign of Libra, she was idealistic, so by nature, certain things were absolutely fine to be impossible in practice, because it was in ideal, in principle, it was more than enough to be there. Now, in the sign of Scorpio, certain things are impossible because it's too complicated. And Venus doesn't necessarily like complications. She rules the sign of Taurus, the sign of simplicity. Scorpio is the opposite. It is the sign of complications and over complications. Now add complications to love. Venus cannot be dissociated from love. So this is where we have conditional love. So you can imagine that doesn't go all that well with Venus, because she has freedom. Love always has to be. She was born from the, I don't even know to pronounce this word or not, the testicles of Uranus. But Uranus is the principle of freedom. Uranus, where it cannot have any bounds. It always leaps forward. So Venus inherited a little bit of that freedom. Love cannot be chained. Love cannot be conditioned. Yet still, in the sign of Scorpio, it has always strings attached to it. It has conditionings to it. So it is up to us, our wisdom, our emotional power, our altruism, to make Venus be balanced. Now, the darker expressions of Scorpio Venus, now this is where there's a lot of this. Jealousy, possession, but like codependency, having urgent and, how should I say, really, really powerful needs. But when I say powerful, when they have much more power and grip over us than healthy, when we compare ourselves to other people also, but in a very not favorable manner. Venus in the sign of Scorpio, because Scorpio is also what we share with one another. But Venus can also translate into financial energy, because Scorpio rules debt. Scorpio rules the resources, money, finances that we share with other people. So strong wants, strong needs, strong desires in this part of the sky are going to be felt very, very strongly. But at the same time, this is also where our needs, we need to urgently satisfy our needs, and we cannot take no, or we cannot surrender it for an answer. You know what I mean? We will need to take some action here. But everything that we lack, we have this tendency to feel it much, much more as a frustration when Venus is in the sign of Scorpio. And also, Venus governs in her own unique way sensuality. So you can imagine that this Venus in the sign of Scorpio are when very strong sexual urges and fetishes and deviations, and the kink basically is very, very strong. I wanted to stay at its strongest, but there are other planets which can really, really bring up the kinks, but Venus is one of them. Venus will have a strong influence on, and when this is very strong within us, you can imagine that mistakes can be made, especially in partnerships and romance, because this is the energy which gives way to infidelity. This is the energy where we can manifest our desires, but doing so might bring a lot of complications. Venus in the sign of Scorpio, when secrets are out, and this is that kind of period. But however, the moment when Venus enters into the sign of Scorpio, according to my expertise, or my experience at least, is going to be actually quite favorable, even if this is, as I said, conditioned love, conditioned attraction, like, for example, OnlyFans. But anyway, so this is very positive because she holds immediately a trine with Saturn. And Saturn is the grounding principle. And Saturn is in the fellow water sign of Pisces. A very, very, very altruistic sign. A sign which sees everything and everyone as, a communion. The sign basically of non-discrimination. So when we add these two slightly conflicting energies together, they actually balance each other out very, very beautifully and very harmoniously, because Venus's conditions here can be translated by Saturn as the minimal self-respect. They can be translated as reality, basically, a reality check. Love unconditionally many times is not enough, because love is just a feeling. This Saturn means that if there's feeling there, then action or sacrifice or something real has to follow. So this is a really, really good energy. And as I said, this really grounds our feelings. This is where the not so favorable feelings associated with Venus in Scorpio, so comparing our situation to others and looking at the complications within love and everything Venusian, that is actually quite positive, because remember that Neptune, we are no longer lost in the illusion. Perhaps the illusion is to just keep love unconditional and be blind to certain conditions that are not being met. You know what I mean? So when that is the reality check, then that is very, very useful, very, very helpful. And that actually gives us a very strong inner vision of what the best choices can be. Why? Because remember Venus Energetic in Libra, that at the very same day, just a few hours earlier, meant the need to take choices. Now, another planet here, Mercury, still moving forward, but in shadow, is also, preparing the theme for its very own retrograde, starting from the 13th of December, lasting until the 1st of January 2024. But of course, I have a specially dedicated video for Mercury retrograde. Please check it out if you're guided. But Mercury is also preparing exactly that: decisions, dialogue, communication, research, finding out terms and conditions, what is needed, speaking to specialists, like lawyers, for example, or legal specialists. Why legal? Because Mercury retrograde into Sagittarius, the sign of the law. Venus was in Libra, sign of the law. So, whatever decisions and choices and big moves we are preparing to make right now, well, Venus gives us the feeling, how we feel about it, how strongly it resonates with our inner truth. Mercury, on the other hand, gives us the factual info. It gives us the practicality. It gives us the realism, especially because it's retrograde, starting to retrograde. So retrograde means perfecting it. Proof, reading it, if that makes sense. Our going back on our plans to make them perfect, to make them as safe and sound and solid and promising and optimistic as possible. Why do I say this? Because Mercury this week, we'll get to this just a little bit later on, holds an absolutely beautiful trine with Jupiter from fellow Earth sign Taurus. So Jupiter and Mercury trines usually mean promises and hope, and it will be okay, we'll make this, we'll do this together, it will be fine, I have faith. But that doesn't necessarily have to be all that real. But in an earth sign, the chances for that to be real are much, much, much higher. So this is why I like it. Because usually, if Jupiter and Mercury's trine mean a promise, then that promise has higher chances to be fulfilled, even though not necessarily the way it was promised, because that's the retrograde to perfect it. But Mercury is also setting the stage for those decisions, but from a highly intellectual, highly cerebral, highly brainstorming and information processing perspective, because that is Capricorn, the realism of the system. And when I say system, everything is a system. I don't mean the system in the classic way, even though Capricorn symbolizes that as well, top-down authority and all of its systems, but it also means the inner structure of everything, that kind of system. You know what I mean? So Mercury will strongly research that and consult that in Capricorn, but when it retrogrades into Sagittarius, it will also consult the higher meaning, higher truth, our own philosophies, but also, if susceptible, the legal side of things. So quite a practical energy. So Venus moving into the transiting the sign of Scorpio adds to this realism, adds to this groundedness, even if her expression at times is well, I don't love this, I cannot accept this is below my standards, this is below my self-worth, this is not healthy love, this is just codependence, I cannot forgive you that you cheated on me, because that's the season, But all of these not so positive feelings can be very, very positive in the context that if that is what you feel, then this decision is clear. Then Mercury will figure out how to terminate the relationship or make changes. However, this can also be true in the reversed way, where I can forgive, where, well, actually, what I have in my life is enough for me. I don't need all that much more. So I can manage with what I have. That kills the bigger dream that I want more. But that killing of the dream, Neptune going direct, can be something so positive because it frees up your energy, and for you to aspire to something much more, I don't even know how to say it, much more useful to you, let's say. So in either way, regardless of how this plays out in your life, this can be quite positive, even if it comes with a dose of pain. And Saturn and Venus's trine are absolutely beautiful for this. And regardless of the feelings and the emotion, this can also be very strong karmic energy, where, for example, Saturn, we repay a karmic debt, we eliminate certain kind of debt karma from our lives, and that debt doesn't necessarily mean financial, it can mean any kind of debt, because Saturn is work and sacrifice. So this is where, karmically speaking, this starts a period where that which we owe or that which is owed to us starts balancing out. Neptune, on the other hand, after the 6th, it will very, very, very slowly start moving forward, but that activates its cleansing effect, if that makes sense. Because water, what does water do? Dissolve, wash away, clean everything. So Neptune activating this side of itself means that, as I said earlier, karma is being washed away, being clarified, also certain heavy emotions. So of course it means a time to balance out debt and connections and stuff like that. So it is going to be very, very important. Now, another energy that is going to take place very, very soon after Venus moves into the sign of Scorpio, not necessarily on the 4th, but very soon after, Venus will hold a sextile with Mercury. A sextile is a harmonious conversation which is activated, which is utilized by us if we take the specific action or if we use the energy, the blessing, in a very active way. So again, this is so good to rectify the plan. Venus gives us how we feel deep, deep down inside Scorpio, the realm of the unconscious, and even how the inner animal feels about it, Scorpio, of our most primal and instinctual self. That is very important. That is not something that should be kept in a box and chained. It is a possibility, like, for example, the life of monks in any religion, really, Christianity, Catholicism, or Buddhism alike. They chain that inner animal, they condition it, they mutate it, they take away its wilderness and ferocity. But 99% of people, we can do that. Our lives, our destinies, our soul paths are not permissive of that. So our choice is to acknowledge its truth, its wants and needs, and alchemize it in order to make ourselves happy, but also make it happy. You know what I mean? When I say ourselves, our higher selves, it's total opposite. So find a balance for every part of our being to have its share of happiness and harmony and whatever that means. So this is why Venus in the sign of Scorpio is so reflective of what the inner animal wants, as in what makes it happy. That is why it is strongly associated with sexual energies, especially deviant, like the kink and the perv, you know what I mean, and the alternative and everything that has to do with that. But also other kind of animalistic, like survival instinct, like anger, but Venus is not the same anger as Mars. You know what I mean? Because Mars is vengeful. Venus is the passive element. So that anger just boils inside of us as psychological toxicity. You know what I mean? That's Venus's modus operandi in a negative way. The toxicity of it, the sheer, I don't wish you well kind of energy. So it's so important for us to know this and to give way to these feelings. But when I say give way, not to express them and to do them, to allow ourselves to be aware of them in that sense. And this period is like a blessing for all of this. Another important energy that is still with us on the 4th is that Mercury holds a sextile with Saturn. That is also very, very grounding. But keep in mind that Mercury is in shadow. So this is like when we begin our research into something, how to do this, how to obtain that, how to fix this. So everything Capricornian. Where does this Capricorn, this 0 to 6 degrees of Capricorn fall into your personal chart? Because that is the Capricorn that is being activated by Mercury. So in that area of life, you are gonna be researching how to get where you want to be, how to get your needs, how to do something or manifest something, because that is Capricorn. And this will be done by brainstorming, but also dialogue and what the system Capricorn is permissive of. So this is where the research begins. But of course, because Mercury is in shadow, that very same research will look very, very differently once you really get into it. So this is just the first phases. So don't necessarily take this with a pinch of salt. It is grounding because it is real and we see one side of it. But as we get into the Mercury retrograde period, and we'll go over this and more communication and our feelings, of course, will change as well. This will look different when Mercury comes back here after it goes direct. So in January next year, like I do believe that it's somewhere the 9th of January when Mercury will be back here, or perhaps much later on. I'm not quite sure about this because I didn't write them down in my notes, but you will find it in the Mercury retrograde video. But anyway, so we will get back, even though this sextile is very grounding and it gives us the sense that we are progressing, we are finding out what we need to do, and we see the reality and we process the reality in a really serious and mature matter. Capricorn, the sign of maturity. It's still not something we can take for granted because it will change. And finally, on the 4th still, Mars holds a quincunx with Jupiter. So again, personally speaking, is what do we believe? Because Mars is in Jupiter's home sign of Sagittarius. So it's all about our higher perceptions. And that, in simply said, is belief. Not religious belief, even though that is can be part of it, especially if we look at the world stage. It's so much religion playing out right now, even though symbolically it's that religion is just a mask. That religion is just Neptune, really, in the sense that they use it to mask the financial and other ideological truths. But it's still religion. It's still the religious dogmatism which upsets everything, which causes a lot of conflict. So this is one way how it plays out on the world stage. The other way how this plays out, even in the now, is the conflict of different laws. You know, even laws within the same legal system. When laws conflict each other, that's like a quincunx. So what is true? What is legal? What is righteous? But individually speaking, this is what do we believe about something. And that something is usually significant because Jupiter is in Taurus, fixed sign. So that is a permanent value or a long-term value in our lives. What do we believe about that? What is true? What is not true? Even if it's just very subjective, we have to consult ourselves, our inner being, in order to find out what we truly believe in. So this quincunx can do that, just that. But this goes so hand in hand with Venus in Scorpio and Mercury in shadow. Everything that I said about earlier. And another energy which complicates things quite strongly, but this, collectively speaking, this in a big picture of what humanity is doing in this particular time period. That is Sedna. I'll show you this conversation. Planetoid Sedna. Where are you, Sedna? Here she is holding a trine with Pluto. This is an Earth trine, but both of these planets are energetic. And both of these planets have a lot to do with the shadow. Pluto, god of the underworld, the shadow, basically the ruler of the shadow. But Sedna is also a symbol of vengeance that just doesn't go away. Grave vengeance, if that makes sense. And how Sedna plays out on the world stage, really, really bringing up the past in an unforgivable way. We see that on the world stage. But this is a trine after all. So we have to see it, we have to see the blessing in it. And what is the blessing in it? It is the awareness gives us the power, Pluto, to change the now. And changing the now means changing the future. So this is Sedna is saying, I done a special video in the summer, so in July or something like that, about Sedna moving into the sign of Gemini and then retrograding back to Taurus, where I spoke about the power of sacrifice and martyrdom. That is what we see playing out on the world stage. So I actually predicted this energy playing out. Anyway, so this trine between Pluto and Sedna is gonna cause the intensity where humanity, again, this is not individual, this is collective. Humanity is gonna be forced to look at some big truth and big loss of lives and sacrifices. You know what I mean? Sedna symbolism. She had her fingers chopped off. But from that sacrifice ultimately and that trauma and that pain, according to the legend, the sea creatures were born, from especially the sea mammals like whales, dolphins, etc., from her fingers. Now, moving on, and in my notes, I say the 6th of, December, we have something truly beautiful happening where the sun in Sagittarius trines Chiron. Now, Chiron is also at a slowdown or almost standing still, because Chiron will also go direct later on in December. So this kind of means that December is a very, very big month. We can imagine this December as, you know, when you're shooting a sling and you pull the whatever, the projectile, whatever you're shooting, all the way back and you're holding it. But while holding it, that is when you're aiming, you know, you're making the projections in your mind. That is the moment when you're targeting. And you know what follows after the target is locked. You will release. So this is how to visualize this energy, collectively and individually speaking. We have the boulder, and the boulder, sorry, not the boulder, because if it's a boulder, then it's that huge war machine kind of sling where they shot boulders at town walls like a catapult. But yeah, that's one of the expression, without a doubt. But you know, the projectile of the sling, the projectile is Pluto, you know, because Pluto is the wrecking ball. But we have it already, the force is there. That's the North Node in Aries, where we have it pulled back and we're holding it. But this Mercury retrograde, that's the bullseye. That's how we focus. That's how we identify the target. So in January 2024, when Pluto moves into Aquarius, but also gains a bit of ground, to be totally honest. Like, it's not the first day when it's at 0 degrees of Aquarius, when it ingresses. It is a bit later on, let's say. Undetermined then, of course. This isn't determined really, but you know, Pluto does need at least a bit of time to make its ground in Aquarius. But when it does, you know, that's when we release. That's when the projectile will fly towards its target. That is symbolically the quantum leap that awaits all of us individually and collectively. But this is the very moment when we are identifying the target. That's how we can look at this Mercury retrograde. So Anyway, the sun trining Chiron, that is an aspect of healing when faith heals. But when I speak about faith, this isn't the Neptunian or even the Piscean kind of faith, where it's deeply spiritual and, the ancient wisdom and what belief does to our bodies and our. No, no, no. This is more like the fiery power of faith. If you believe something and you want it to be that way, chances are it's gonna be that way. And this goes so well with healing. It's not necessarily like the placebo effect of Pisces and Neptune, where slowly and surely, like a drip, your belief gets you there. This is more like the lightning bolt of Sagittarius, where a flare up of your faith does something very, very quickly and rapidly, a moment of healing. But that healing doesn't need to be pleasant, unfortunately. It can be like cauterizing, or how you pronounce that word, when you clean the wound, when the healing is itchy, it heals, but it's so annoying. But the annoying is welcome, because you know that something good is resulting from this. So yeah, but of course, there are certain other energies in the sky which do highlight the itching effect of the healing. For example, like a Chiron will hold a semi-square with Saturn, so that puts a bit of salt in our wounds. And dwarf planet Orcus holds quincunx with this Chiron. So the healing is not necessarily comfortable. But, on the world stage, when the sun trine Chiron is going to happen, we will see that legally, there is a healing tentative. And what does healing mean? Well, on one hand, COVID. What happened during COVID? There is going to be trials, very powerful legal trials in that sense, to put the damage done right. That's very obvious. But the other element is that certain laws are going to be reflective of doing justice for a certain group of people who were discriminated. So, and that especially the international law. So we will see this healing effect take place in many ways, shapes, and forms on the world stage, but of course also in our own personal lives. And Mars is chasing the sun. So Mars itself will also hold this trine to Chiron. And Mars is the activating principle. And Mars is even more important because it is the ruler of Aries. So Mars will build on this very, very strongly. And of course, at the same day, the moon will oppose Chiron. You can't see it on my screen, so you have to trust me. So we will feel that very, very strongly, because the moon is the collective feeling. And of course, like on the 6th, the highlight of the show is Neptune standing still in the sky and preparing to go direct. But this is such a slow energy that it's just symbolical. Neptune is just gonna stand still. And in fact, so let's move back. Let's move on to the 7th, where on the 7th we have the perfection of Mercury trine Jupiter. I spoke about this. So this is the optimism. This is the hope. This is the promise. This is where something is possible. You get the news or the communication or your research, or someone else, like a boss, like an authority figure, Capricorn, gives you the news or the communication, or you figure out how to accomplish something, how to get to somewhere, something favorable, hopeful, positive communication that delights you. But I must say that both Jupiter at this moment is retrograde and Mercury is in shadow. So this is maybe from the past. This is maybe evoking things from the past for you to look at. So this isn't necessarily something new. And what you observe this week may be just the possibilities, like a large number of possibilities. It is nothing set in stone yet. So this is how we have to anticipate this good news, that it is good news, but it's not set in stone yet. As Mercury will go retrograde, but then Jupiter go direct, this will change it. Because as soon as in January, Mercury re-enters Capricorn, on one hand, it will rehold the sextile with Saturn, that it makes it real. On the other hand, later on it will rehold the trine with Jupiter, which means you are satisfied, which means your faith, your whatever it is that you've done is paid off. So both Saturn and Jupiter favor Mercury. And when these two principles, which are needed for manifestation, because Jupiter comes with the principle, the big dream, Saturn comes with the reality, making it real. So this is really, really good, but only expect the best part of this in the end, towards the end of January, to be totally honest with you. But it's still good news. It's still a blessing. It is still wonderful. It can, for example, represent good news based on your work, your reputation, something valuable that you have in your life, good news regarding some investment that you want to make, a job that you want to embrace, a career. So anything, material, but also based on your higher thinking or your higher knowledge or diplomas, higher education, Jupiter. So it can translate to so very many things. And also on the 7th, we have another beautiful trine between Saturn and Vesta. And Vesta is retrograde. And Vesta is in the beginning degrees of Cancer. This is really, really beautiful because this is a strong protective energy. This is where the power of either self-care, self-nurture, or the power of community. But this is where a community is not everyone, just souls and people who are very close to you, who matter to you reciprocally. Saturn is as I said, the protective principle. Cancer itself also the shell, the protection, the home, the embrace, the care. So this is a really, really, really beautiful energy. And of course that Vesta also trines Neptune, Venus. So you can imagine this is so beautiful with whatever is going to be playing out in our lives, the tough decisions, we may see the beautiful side at this moment, or we may receive help or an embrace. This is really good for love and romance, especially love and romance, because Saturn is direct already. And Venus is still charged, in a sense, with the summer energies when she was retrograde in the sign of Leo. This is where, not this week yet, but in the weeks to follow, she will square her retrograde angles in the sign of Leo. So that wisdom that we accumulated about love and passion and creativity and the needs of the inner child, the Leo, this summer, this is when all that wisdom is put to good use. Very, very good use. So maybe the connections that you had in your life returning in Venus retrograde, and they failed, and they really reminded you why it's not a good idea to do this and that. All that energy, the wisdom of it, can be put to good use to have new connections. You know what I mean? So this can really mean new love, but based a little bit on your attractions, on what attracts you psychologically, the kink basically. But we don't have to look at it as kink, as basically sexual compatibility, because that is the highest expression of this. But the sexual compatibility is consolidated by Saturn in the sign of Pisces, strong morality, principles and faith that two people share. And then there comes Vesta with Cancer, a common longing, a common belonging to somewhere, like wanting to live together or wanting to form a family, wanting to form something sacred together that they want to share with either the divine or but community or whatever. When these three elements meet, that's when love becomes very, very real and blessed and long-term Saturn. And Venus in the sign of Scorpio, that also has long-term on it, because Scorpio is a fixed sign. You know what I mean? And Vesta in the sign of Cancer, of course, long-term, because she wants a family, regardless of what kind of relationship you have. Two people are enough to be a family, you know, two souls are a family. So yeah, that is really, really beautiful. That is one of the most beautiful highlights of the week. Then my notes tell me to go to the 9th, where we have a Venus and Moon conjunction. The Moon herself is also not very comfortable in the sign of Scorpio. She is debilitated because the Moon is exalted in Taurus. So in the sign of Scorpio, she is so and so. But the meeting of Moon and Venus in the sky, especially when Venus has such a strong duty in this period, well, it means that something sinks in deeply. That can be that sexual attraction that I was speaking about just a few days later, a few days earlier. But it can be also the physical or the scorpionic, the hard to face truth part of the decision that we are making. Or it can be something that changes our emotion and it sinks in, that Moon. But another interesting energy, and let me just show this to you, is that the asteroid Pallas Athena, goddess of wisdom, goddess of tactics, very, very meticulous and very Mars-like in the sign of Scorpio. So when Pallas Athena is in Scorpio, she takes on her more masculine expression, because Pallas Athena is wisdom and all the magic and the goddess who inspired heroes, who helped heroes, the saving grace, basically. In the sign of Scorpio, she is also the tactical leader. She is also the mathematician, the tactician. And she also knows how to get what she wants with brute force and poison. Scorpio. She can outsmart an entire army, out-tactic them, but she can also poison them and buy the same thing. So this is Pallas Athena's darker side, when I'll do anything to get what I want. You know what I mean? And the Moon with this triple conjunction, something really sinks in, even in a tactical, practical, calculating way. Then moving on to the 9th, and I have to show you the asteroids again, because something that I really, really love here is, look, this Mercury in shadow, almost standing still in the sky. Oh, I went to the 10th, but it's okay. It is conjunct Quaoar, dwarf planet Quaoar, and asteroid Centaur Pholus. Now, this triple conjunction, this may mean that a lot of people are going to make the decision, the choice, to sign up for dance classes or somehow to commune with the power of sound. The power of sound, either in an artistic sense or not. Let me give you an example of not artistic sense. Public speaking. That is more like professional, Capricornian. or someone who is very good with sound and music, plays instruments, or is a good singer, gets hired, out of the blue. Would you like to sing at this date, anything like that? And for those people, this starts their Mercury retrograde, because they will say yes, but that will follow some work, some planning, all of that. And also the contract. Yes, I'm gonna do this for you, but the terms and conditions and the agreement. But on a smaller scale, this is when we want to go dancing, or we want to integrate music, but especially like the ritualistic music, like drumming and sound bath and singing bowl and shamanic music and all of that. Quawar, because Quawar rules all of that into our everyday routines. And Pholus brings a really, really strong curiosity. And Pholus gives us this, like, Pholus is negative quality when curiosity leads us to grave danger and accidents, because that's part of his legend. He, in a way, killed himself unwillingly by being way too curious what Hydra poison does to the body, or how a small dart infused with Hydra poison can instantly kill even a sea monster or very, very big creatures, not to mention a human or centaur. But in a positive way, this means that we will simply not care of the mess up, of us being clumsy, of everything that we are not good at. Our curiosity will be enough to drive us into trying it. So this is an energy I really, really, really love. And they trine Jupiter, so it's something positive. And also, Mercury at this moment will sextile Pallas Athena. On the 10th, the sextile is no longer exact, so that's why I wanted to look at the 9th. But that is also really good news, because remember what I said about Pallas Athena and Scorpio. Finding a means to a tactic or the force or the resources to get where you want to get. Sextile Mercury needs that help because it is preparing to solve certain things in Capricorn, first of all. So all the practical details, this is a really, really good energy. The not so favorable part of the energy is that both this... Oh, sorry. So on the 10th year, Pallas Athena and Venus are opposing Jupiter. And Jupiter is in Venus's home sign of Taurus. So this energy we will feel very, very strongly. Again, Venus and Pallas Athena sextile Mercury. You know what I mean? So Mercury trines Jupiter. What does this mean? This means that we found certain ways, means, tactics to get where we want. But now is the moment, but how do we feel about it? Is it true or not true? Remember my example just a little bit earlier about the dancing or singing less, or to integrate sound and drumming into our lives? Well, this is the moment when, well, I'm not particularly good at this, but I cannot sing. Am I really going to do this? Am I going to make a fool of myself? This is the moment when perhaps curiosity and the strong drive it gives us and the wish to experience that, this is where we might second guess all of this. So this is the moment where for some people they decide, well, I'm not actually going to go to dance lesson live, but I'm going to sign up for Zoom class and do it, in a different way. I still have Quawar, but not necessarily the way but this is a silly little example. This can, for some people, be very, very serious. I love that person deeply, and this is the but what? this is the specific, or I love that job, I love the career, or I love something, but, and that Jupiter brings the but. Because how do I feel about it in principle? If I look at the future, a long-term future, Jupiter in the sign of Taurus, how will this impact me? So this is when another episode of that brainstorming, and this also goes hand in hand with Neptune, direct by this moment. So this is when Neptune directs expressions, washing away the illusion, waking up from the dream, or analyzing both sides of the spectrum are going to come online. So yeah, and all of this energy is going to lead up to a new moon that we have in the sign of Sagittarius on the around the 12th. And of course, all of this energy is leading up to next week's Mercury retrograde season beginning. But that is a subject for a different horoscope. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for all the love, all the support. If you'd like to keep on supporting me, you can donate in the PayPal link in the description below. With this being said, wishing everyone a really, really wise and powerful in a spiritual way week, where we can truly figure out our truth, and we can truly use this energy of the veil being lifted towards our highest good. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, bye for now. Sorry, I always struggle to close my recording.